Thank you, Kristen. That was beautiful. I love that song. Now, this past week, I saw a clip from this movie. I hadn't seen it in years, but the clip still shook me, and the joke in it made me smile. Do you remember the movie Jurassic Park, the very first one? Well, take a look at this clip.
Anybody hear that? It's an impact tremor is what it is. I'm fairly alarmed here.
Come on. We gotta get out of here. Now, right now. Go, let's go. Hey. Start the engine. Must go faster.
All right. Yeah, it's a little scary scene. Don't worry, the dinosaur's not real. Now, did you see the joke? Did you see the joke? All right, let me show you. That's the joke, okay? Because years ago, that started appearing on mirrors. Now, and the reason it did is they got a new fancy mirror that curved so that you could see more of what was behind you when you were driving. But the curve made everything behind you a little bit smaller. So, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Not exactly what you want to see when a dinosaur is chasing you through the jungle. So it makes for a good joke, and it's a good warning, so that you know that car behind you may be a little closer than you think. But it also tells you something. It tells you that what you see doesn't always reflect what is actually there. Many years ago, someone asked me a question with which I still wrestle. The person asked me, if you were walking down a dark street at night and you were alone and someone was walking towards you, would your reaction change depending on the complexion of their skin? And I realized it would. If the skin was darker, I'd be more scared. Now, and I tried to rationalize it, and I couldn't. It made no sense. And I thought how it would feel if I was judged for something that arbitrary. So now I run in the morning because I'm getting ready for the 5K race. You'll hear more about that later. And I've realized, even though I run early in the morning, like before the sun is up, people are out. People are not only exercising, they're coming home from work, overnight shifts, or walking home from work, or they're, for some reason, going to school really early in the morning. And I make a point of greeting everyone the same way. Like, hey, how you doing? It's 5 a.m., but it's great. No matter what their appearance might be. But sometimes people can misjudge my appearance. Their eyes distort what they see. I've had people ask me, for seemingly no reason, Kennedy, are you okay? Are you upset or angry? And I never could figure it out. And then I realized I have ARF. I have angry resting face. Okay? Celebrities have it. Kanye rest, Angry resting face. Kit Harington, look at him. Angry resting face. You know, remember him from Game of Thrones? He even talked about in an interview that people will walk him on the street and say, "Are you okay?" He says, "Just my face." Even the Queen of England, dearly departed, dealt with this. She said, "When I don't smile, people think I'm cross, but I'm not cross at all." She had angry resting face. Or, because women get misjudged this way more than men, there is another acronym that is used, okay? It's not ARF, it's BRF. I'll let you figure out the B, okay? But, do you get the point? You know, has your eyes ever tricked you like that? Or has someone else's eyes misjudged you? Has their vision got distorted? Your vision got distorted. You know, we began talking last week about seeing people with God's eyes and how when we do that, it enables us to see who God is leading us to reach out to love, to invite, to welcome. Yet our vision can get distorted, and there is one thing more than any other that will distort your vision. And today, Jesus shows you not only what that is, but how you become free from it. Now, before we get to the story where Jesus shows you that, we need to begin with what happens before. Last week I talked about how Jesus, while he preached to the crowds, always focused on the one. And no story, I think, in the Bible illustrates this more powerfully than the story you're about to hear. And to understand that, you need to understand where Jesus was. He was, before this story happened, on the other side of a huge lake called the Sea of Galilee. And he was preaching to a large crowd there. And suddenly, while he was preaching, he said, "We got to go to the other side of the lake." In fact, Mark relates that that's what happened. And he says this. Leaving the crowd behind, they, the disciples, took Jesus with them in the boat, just as he was. Now, what does that mean, just as he was? What it means is that Jesus, because the crowd was so big, had been preaching from a boat so everybody could hear him. And now, he wants to go so quickly, he wants to hop straight from the preaching boat into the boat that's going to take him across. So he went just as he was, from one boat to the other. And Mark also tells you that Jesus was exhausted. That he immediately fell asleep in the boat, and he didn't wake up even when they faced a fierce storm that was about to swamp the boat. In fact, they had to wake Jesus up to save them. And how did Jesus save them? He woke up, he looked at the storm, and he said, "Be quiet!" And the storm stopped like that. Pretty cool. And Jesus left the crowd. So urgently, he braved a storm that almost swamped the boat. And why? What led him to cross the Sea of Galilee? Let's find out. As we take up the story in Mark chapter 5, beginning in the first verse of that chapter. They, the disciples, came to the other side of the sea, to the region of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. The man lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with the chain, for he had often been restrained with shackles and chains. But the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to the man, Jesus had, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And the demon replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Now there on the hillside a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So Jesus gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, stampeded down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. And the swineherds, the herders of the pigs, ran off and told it in the city and in the country. And the people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the man possessed by demons sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had the legion. And they became frightened. Those who had seen what had happened to the man possessed by demons and to the swine reported it. And then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. And as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis, which means these 10 cities around that area, how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. This passage may be one of the most terrifying in the entire Bible. Imagine the scene. You land, and all you see in front of you are tombs. And out of the tombs, you hear howling. Ah! Chains clinking. And then you see the source of the house. There is a naked man running through the tombs, dragging the chains and screaming and howling. And this man sees you. And now he is running straight to you. You know what? I'd be running. I'd be running back to the boat. That's scary. I imagine Jesus had to hold his disciples. Chill, guys. It's going to be okay. And I figured, they said, well, man, the guy did stop a storm, but telling it to shut up, so maybe we're okay. And then the man comes, and he kneels before Jesus. He hasn't come to hurt anyone. He's come because he is hurting. He is besieged by a massive evil. You know, I can't imagine what it would be to be possessed by one demonic being. I don't want to even think about what it would be to be possessed by thousands. And this is likely what is occurring to this man, because when Jesus has this chilling dialogue with at least the representative of these demons, the demon says, "We are called Legion." Now, the Legion was the largest unit in the Roman army. It comprised nearly 6,000 soldiers. And this man is yearning to be delivered from this evil that tortures him. And Jesus has left the crowds and weathered the storm to bring deliverance to just this one man. But in doing so, Jesus shows you what can often prevent you from reaching out to others around you. And what is that? Fear. I mean, If you had been there, what would you have done? If you'd seen that man running towards you, would you have stood your ground? Would you have stayed long enough to see that he came to kneel before you? Or would you have turned and fled? I imagine if Jesus hadn't been there, the disciples probably would have run. I would have. But what if Jesus had fled? I mean, Jesus had to be scared too. He was human, not just divine. And yet Jesus faced his fears, and he stood his ground. But what if he hadn't done that? What if he had run away? Can you imagine being that man and seeing the one hope in the world for your deliverance running away from you? Can you imagine the despair he would feel? But Jesus did face his fears. And because of that, this man was delivered. And in doing that, he was able to see past the pain and see this person who he ended up calling to be an evangelist to everyone in his community. But too often, we can get tripped up by fears. Why? We don't see things as they are, as the writer Ananias Nin put it. We see things as we are. And often what we are is scared. A book by Kyle Idleman inspired this series, and Idleman in that book tells this story. He had been preaching in a local prison, and after the service, this convict came up to greet him. And this guy was built. He clearly spent some time in weights in the yard. And he was tatted all up and down his sleeves, up and down his neck. He was a bit intimidating. And yet when he came, he pulled a picture out of his Bible. And he said to Kyle, he said, I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you see. And Idleman looked at the picture and saw the guy standing in a driveway with a beer in his hand. And the guy said, this is where I used to live. It was my home for 7 years. It's my driveway. Idleman kept looking because he knew he wasn't seeing what the man wanted him to see. And then he saw it in the background. He saw the church. This guy lived across the street from a church. And Kyle knew what this man needed. He needed an apology. Now, it wasn't Kyle's church, but he knew exactly what had happened. And the man said, often on Sunday, I'd be working on my bike in the driveway, and I'd see people go to church. They never said hello to me. They never even made eye contact. The only contact I had was they put a note in my mailbox, telling me to mow my grass. And he asked Kyle, he said, why didn't they say hello to me? Why didn't they invite me to church? I don't know if I would have come, but they never even asked. You see, he was haunted by that picture because years later, in a drunken rage, he had killed a man. And now he sat in prison looking at that picture and wondered, could it have been different? And that's when Kyle realized that his question wasn't rhetorical. He really didn't know why they hadn't invited him. He needed an answer. So Kyle simply said to him, you were different. and they were scared. And then he writes this sentence that I cannot get out of my head. And he says, there's something in us that wants to follow Jesus, but doesn't want to walk across the street. I get that. Because there's something to me like that, because I know that a few weeks ago, I resisted walking across the sidewalk. A few weeks ago, I noticed that there was a van parked outside our church on the street. And it was there pretty much most of the day and all night. And so I deduced somebody was living in that van. And I wondered what to do. I thought about calling the cops because that would be the safe choice. And then I saw the old guy who lived there standing outside the van one day. I screwed up my courage, and I went over and said hello. I said, it's cool for you to leave your van here, it's fine. And he told me his story. For years, he lived in an apartment very near the church. And then the tires on his van went, and he had to make a choice. His rent or tires. He chose tires because the van got him to dialysis. And without dialysis, he would die. So now he lives in his van while he saves up money to get an apartment again. And he didn't want anything from us. In fact, he donated $20 so that he could use an outlet on our building to power his phone. But you know, I almost never met Mitch. That's his name. And we got to know each other, by the way. Often he parks by the labyrinth where I walk, and after the walk, we reflect together on the faith that we share, because Mitch is a Christian. He's a member of the Orthodox tradition. But I never would have known that if I hadn't walked across the sidewalk. And I almost didn't. I almost called the cops to chase Mitch away. And then I would never have known about his pain. And I never would have seen the remarkable person behind it. You know, if we're going to go where Jesus calls us to, it will mean getting past fears. Fears of difference, fears of awkwardness, fears of rejection, fears of walking across the street, even financial fears. What do I mean? Well, you know, one of the things in this story I never figured out. Why the pigs? I felt bad for the pigs. They're just hanging out. Pigs, really, Jesus? And then this week I finally got it. Imagine you're walking down the street. Maybe you're in downtown Hollywood, and it's a busy day, people are moving around, and you see a bomb on the street, and it's about to go off, and no one else has seen it but you, and you know you got to do it. So you take the bomb, but where are you going to go? Wherever you're going to throw it, you're going to injure, kill people. And then you see like this empty building that's vacant, and you, in desperation, you throw the bomb through the window, and you sacrifice the building for the people. Now, Jesus faced a similar choice, because if Jesus cast out these potentially thousands of demons, where are they going to go? They got to go somewhere. In fact, the demons do a negotiation. Jesus, we know you're going to send us far away, but we'd rather you send us, not too far. And so they ask about the pigs. And Jesus knows if he doesn't send them there, they're eventually going to go somewhere else, and they may torment not one person, but thousands. And so Jesus, to save the people, sacrifices the pigs. Now, how do the locals react? Did they rejoice that the man that terrified and tormented them with his own torment is now clothed in his right mind? No, they're scared about that. And they're wondering, how much more is Jesus going to cost? I mean, they've already lost the pigs. And so they asked Jesus to leave, to go away. And Jesus does. But what if they had seen past their fears? Their fears of Jesus' power, their fear of financial loss. I mean, they did lose those pigs. What if Jesus had stayed? How many people might have been healed? How many people might have been blessed? But they couldn't get past their fears. The pain of their financial loss. And so Jesus went away. They just couldn't see what Jesus could bring. And I get it, 2,000 pigs must have been a lot of money. But what is that in the face of a tormented person, in the possible future torment of thousands? Yet too often those same financial fears can trip us up. You know, as I mentioned, in about a month, a little more than that, we're going to be throwing these happy hours on the patio. And I mean, these happy hours are going to be intense. I mean, we're talking heavy hors d'oeuvres, we're talking nice wines, nice beers, and we're talking free, man. And we're going to put a basket out, and people can throw some money in, but so that, you know what that means? That means that each of these suckers are going to cost us about $1,000, more or less, each time. Now, our leadership voted this week to commit that money. And it's not because they didn't have some financial concerns. It's $1,000, a lot of money for a church like ours. But they thought, when it comes to reaching our community, to throwing a party, because Jesus loved parties. In fact, the number one image in heaven, for heaven, is a party. It's again and again in the Gospels. And for us to throw a party where anybody can invite their friends and have a great time and be loved and invited and welcomed. They said that means more to us. It means more to God than holding on to money that's not even ours to begin with. I mean, it's God's money. It's always been God's money. And what did God do? For us, what did God let go of? In Jesus, God let go of everything. God's position, God's power, even God's very life. And don't you know that on the night before Jesus was killed, he was scared. But he faced his fears. And he went past the pain of that cross. And he gave up everything, even his life, for you. And why? Because he loves you. He loves you no matter what. And that was worth whatever the cost. To save you, to free you from what holds you hostage. And in the end, what is $1,000 compared to a God who gives up that? Everything. for you and for me. And so, where are you going to face your fears? Where is there someone that God is calling you to invite, to welcome, to love? Where is God calling you to cross the street? You know, over the next several weeks, we're going to have opportunity after opportunity for you to face your fears. Less than a week from now, we're going to be unloading pumpkins. And we're going to need everybody there, okay? And not only that, but you can invite your friends. If you go work out somewhere, invite your friends. Tell them, man, you're going to get a serious workout. I mean, one year we had like a CrossFit gym come. They were loving it. They were out there throwing pumpkins. They were intense. I was like, staying away from those CrossFit people. They're going to kill me with those pumpkins. They're like tossing them. It's intense. They love to work out. Invite your friends. Then you can come yourself. Say, I don't know if I can do a pumpkin. Well, then come in and cheer them on. You can eat a donut. You go. Lift those pumpkins. And then October 16th, we're going to have these kids up here. They're going to be singing. And then you can come bring some food or eat some food. Invite your friends. There's going to be a bunch of food on the patio at 10:15. You can come and say, come. It's going to be awesome. Free meal. Cute kids singing. And then first Friday in November, a free happy hour. And we're going to make this the best happy hour in Hollywood, man. Nothing's going to equal it. I mean, we're going to have great stuff. And all you need to do is start there. Unload some pumpkins this Saturday. Invite some friends to come with you. You know, Jesus faced his fears to love you, to deliver you from what holds you back. Can each of us do the same? You know, Jesus will help you. Jesus will help you face your fears. Jesus will help you to love as Jesus loves. You know, because he's good like that. He's got your back. Let us pray.